podcasting from sunny Phoenix, Arizona. Welcome to Tips for Tour Operators, your podcast for growth hacks, marketing tips, and actionable insights from leading experts in the tourism industry. Welcome, everybody. My name is Dustin Hoyman. I'm your host for the Tips for Tour Operators podcast. Today, we have an amazing episode. We're talking to Laurel Darren from Wild Bunch Desert Guides. They are a hiking and biking tour based in Arizona. Now, Laurel came to me because she listened to the podcast with JJ Briles from Stellar Adventures, and she said, I know JJ, and I need to tell you an amazing story. After we talked, it was clear that she needed to be on the podcast because she showed something that was completely different than a tip that I ever would have thought of before. Today, we're talking about gratitude and what it can do for your tour business. So without further ado, let's get started. Laurel, welcome to the Tip for Tour Operators podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic. I'm so excited to have the opportunity to talk to you today and be a part of this podcast.
Yeah, I'm super excited to have you. We talked a little bit before about gratitude and what that means. So we're going to talk today about that podcast. But to get started, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm originally from the Quad Cities, which is Iowa-Illinois border, which is AKA John Deere country. Born and raised, Midwest girl, moved to Arizona in 2012. But all through my childhood, I was a tomboy athlete type girl, always playing with the boys, never with the girls. Didn't have a clue how to do anything girly, so to speak, but I could play kickball like a champion. Moved here 2012, and here I am. I'm in Arizona.
And what are you doing right now?
Well, I currently own Wild Bunch Desert Guides, which is a boutique mountain bike and hiking tour company here based in Scottsdale, Phoenix, Arizona, and I love it.
Oh, that's awesome. Tell me a little bit more about your tour.
Well, we do private mountain biking and hiking tours, which means we don't combine any groups of people. So if two people call and want to go on a Monday morning mountain biking, they'll go out with their own guide. And if two other people call and want to go mountain biking on a Monday morning, they'll have their own guide. And everything we do is very, very private. We cater to our guests the best we can. And we put together our adventures according to the expectations that the guests want when they come to our beautiful Sonoran Desert.
Oh, that's great. So you said you moved to Arizona in 2012 and now you're a guide now. How did you get into becoming a guide? We talked a little bit before and that wasn't your original, career trajectory. So how did you get into becoming a guide?
Well, when I moved from Iowa to Arizona, I was a massage therapist for about 13 years and I ran my own business. And so had a little bit of business sense coming to Arizona, but I made a transition basically because I wanted to be in the outdoors more and live in an environment that was beautiful and sunny 300 days plus of the year. I gave my massage business to someone else back in Iowa, passed it along, didn't really want anything out of it, just wanted someone else an opportunity to continue to practice and have clients already given to them basically. So moved here in 2012 and I started out working in retail for about a year for Tri Sports based out of Tucson. They had a little shop in Tempe that didn't quite make it. And one of my friends actually sent me a Facebook message that Arizona Outback Adventures was hiring. And so I, in that moment, applied, sent my resume over, and literally John, my former boss, called me and I was there 15 minutes later and hired because of my biking credentials. And so that's how I started my journey. Yeah, that's how I started my journey. It was just very quick, like, wow, hi, you now are going to become a guide. And, so in my past, I've always been that kind of girl that took people out to do things. So when I worked at Tri Sports, for example, people would come in and they'd want to ride, say, the Ironman course. And I would be that girl that would be like, okay, I'll meet you here at 5 a.m. I'll take you. Or, if they want to go to hiking or do something crazy like that, I was always, enthusiastic about giving people an adventure and just making sure that they had a good time, no matter if it was paid or non-paid. And, obviously in that scenario, it was non-paid, but I've always been that person that wants to give people a good time and an experience.
So that's just been in your blood. I mean, it sounds like you were leading tours before you even knew what that really meant. That'd be correct. That's great. That's great. When we talked a little bit, you knew JJ, who was on a previous podcast, and you had talked about, we just connected over Instagram and we were talking, and you had this really great concept of gratitude and what that meant to you, and basically what it meant for a lot of different things. So today's podcast can be focused all about the gratitude. And can you just tell me a little bit about like what gratitude is, what it means to you, and how did you learn to practice gratitude and to be thankful?
Well, gratitude to me is being thankful for the things you have and being ready to show people, no matter how you choose to do that you are very appreciative of the things that they do, whether it's a material thing or it's a kind, nice thing they do. I always feel like I overkill it a little bit, but I'm always I like to show that. When I was a little girl, my parents are divorced and I was with my mom most of the time. And I'll never forget things like, one time we were in Kmart and I clearly remember being about 7 years old, and the lady in front of us at the cash register was buying, I believe it was like school supplies or something, and couldn't afford the whole amount. And my mom just very quietly and kindly offered to pay for it and never said a thing, just didn't make a big deal. And I remember that clearly, watching my mom do those things throughout my childhood, and never really making it a big deal or about her. It was always about doing it for no reason other than to be a good, kind person. And so as I've grown up and become an adult, my mom has always said to me, do something nice for someone every day and don't tell anyone, or, pay it forward, or what you put out will come back to you in the universe in a gratitude sense. So it may not happen in this moment, or it may not happen today, but in my time on this earth, 42 years, I just aged myself. I honestly, and when you and I talked about this in the prep session, I honestly have had some pretty darn amazing, crazy, coincidental gratitude, pay it forward moments, whether it's in my career as owning a business now, or it's been just on a personal level with people that I encounter every day, and or like in my racing career, when I'm doing mountain biking racing, or in my past as a former marathon runner, etc. So, it's just gratitude. The more you put out, I believe the more you get back. And that is seriously the basis and foundation for Wild Bunch Desert Guides, I think, is gratitude all across the board.
Yeah, that's really great. Really great. So how has gratitude and, showing that and going out of your way to make sure that you do pay it forward and you do, basically the right thing, but take it a little bit extra step, how has that impacted you as a business owner and impacted, Wild Bunch Desert Guides?
Well, I definitely believe the honesty and the gratitude part of it. So a great example would be when we deal with concierge, and I always make sure my staff, when they drop people off and or meet people at a hotel, go in and thank our concierge and introduce themselves. I think that the feedback I've gotten back is that the concierge really appreciate knowing my staff, and when they go to schedule, say, a tour, a private small tour, they're able to say to the guest, we recommend Wild Bunch Desert Guides because, Jay is an amazing mountain biker. We've actually met him. He's come in, we know who he is, we know who you're dealing with. So in that respect, I believe we've gotten a lot more leads and or bookings because my guides are visible and they're very thankful in a way that a lot of bigger companies who've been in business for a long time may not always still continue to do the small things like that. So being boutique to me means the gratitude piece is pretty huge, personal level, doing kind things and being thankful for what you have and what you've done.
So you actually have the individual guides and actually talk to the concierges themselves and build relationship from that level?
Yes, I mean, I'm not always, obviously, logistically, I can't be everywhere at one time, but my guides either go into the hotel. Sometimes I give them the commissions checks to take directly to the concierge. That way they have to make contact with directly, but some of my guides actually call if they get there and the concierge is very busy and they have to walk away. They will call the hotel on their own cell phone and ask for concierge and thank the concierge directly. I know Chana from the Omni Mauna Lucia here has called me and actually said to me, your guide Ellen called, and that was really, really great and thanked me for the booking. So they take the time to do that. And it's just something I've asked them to do. I can't, like I said, I can't manage or make them do that, but it's been, I feel like it's been a very successful piece of my company is to have guides that are willing to do that on behalf of me and my company. So I'm grateful for that for sure.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Now you shared a really incredible story with me earlier about, you said there's something that showing the gratitude basically has returns. Can you tell me that story about how that, I want you to tell the story, so I'm not going to give it away, but, tell me a little bit about how the gratitude just, extended itself into the future and came back around and helped you.
Okay. So we talked about a few years ago before I decided to even do my own company. A couple of friends and I were out mountain biking in the Four Peaks Wilderness area, which is where Stellar Adventures runs their ATV, UTV Hummer tours. I didn't know that Stellar existed at the time, but I was a guide for Arizona Outback Adventures, and we made a mistake and didn't have enough water to finish our ride. Shame on us. And so we were kind of
Arizona desert.
Yeah, for sure. It was May, I believe it was May. And so anyway, long story short, you pray that a trail angel will appear, hopefully. And a trail angel did appear, and it was a guide from Stellar Adventures. And he stopped and he helped us, and he gave us water, gave us a hard time. But at the same time, he was seriously like a savior in that moment and a true trail angel. If you're in our industry, you understand what that means. All tour operators will get that. But anyway, of course, we're all grateful because we can live another day, even though we were stupid and didn't have enough water. So I decided that night to go home and put together an email to Stellar Adventures. And I looked it up what they were and found out that they were a pretty big, well-known company in our industry. And I just sent an email to info@stellaradventures.com. And I went into what had happened on the trail and how grateful I was that someone stopped and helped us with guests and made us a priority in that moment when the guests are always number one, right? And just how grateful we were to have that. But I also at the same time know as a guide that when you're out there and you see something wrong, at least for me when I'm guiding, I would stop too. So anyway, fast forward, I made a decision to open my own company, and I got invited to a National Concierge Association meeting to find out if it was something I wanted to join in the future. And it was actually an auction. at a restaurant here in Phoenix. And we were just in the stages of getting our permit. I had no idea what was going on other than I had been a guide. Like, I had no idea about the concierge part of it, nothing. And so I was sitting at a table by myself, and this gentleman walked up to me with this cowboy hat on and sat down across from me and introduced himself as JJ Briles from Stellar Adventures. And my eyes were like a deer in headlights. And I'm like, I emailed you a couple months ago about being in the Four Peaks. And he basically said, oh yeah, hi, I'm JJ and I run Stellar Adventures, just went into all that, put his business card down on the table, asked me what I was doing there. And I said, well, I just opened my own company. I have no clue what I'm doing, but I'm here just to check it out. And he said, here's my card. If you need any help, you let me know. I will help you. I will give you advice. I will do whatever it takes to make you successful. And he meant it. And to this day, JJ has, well, he doesn't answer all my calls, but he has been, I can be a little overbearing with the thank you piece, but he's been amazing with his advice. He's given me tons and tons and tons of leads. He's taken me out and introduced me to concierge and endorsed my business. And when you have a 20-year business endorsing you, that's big time. We've done cookies together. Last year, about a year ago, I sat across from him at a local coffee shop with sunglasses on, all teary-eyed, when he asked me to add my staff as his hiking and biking subcontracting piece for Stellar Adventures. So you're 2 years into business, Laurel, and here's a 20-year business asking you, because he believes in you, to become a part of his baby. And so now Stellar Adventures offers hiking and biking, and I'm still Wild Bunch Desert Guides, but he subcontracts my staff to represent Stellar. And that right there speaks volumes about being thankful and grateful for just a simple email, And there's not a day that doesn't go by where I am not totally grateful that JJ Briles stepped into my journey and into my world. And I rent a space out of Stellar now for my bikes. He's kind about the rent I pay him. I have access to any Stellar vehicle that I need to transport my guests. There's nothing like rolling up in an M1009 to pick up your guests to go hiking. That's pretty darn cool. So that's the story right there that should tell it all about just being grateful and thankful, and really sincerely meaning it and being genuine about it at the same time. But he doesn't take my calls all the time. I just want to point that out. I'm making him feel bad.
So here's if anybody listening or watching, JJ from Stellar Adventures, he was in episode 107 of the Tips for True Operators podcast. And and here's what's really interesting is he talked about a little bit, I don't know how much on the podcast, but, personally just getting to know him during that, about someone who was a titan of the tourism industry while he was getting his start, helping him out, and then he's doing the same to you. So I'm seeing this really big theme of, really paying it forward, and then also looking back and making sure that anybody that hasn't been in that space, that they do understand your appreciation. It sounds like that's, it works both sides, looking forward as well as behind.
Well, I think once, it feels like in our industry that once someone has helped you in your past, that you focus on maybe finding someone else that you can pass on the knowledge and the education to about our industry. I currently have been doing the same for a friend of mine who opened a boutique horseback riding company. So it's kind of like, when someone does it for you, pay it forward. You do it for someone else, and it's easier to do it and do it genuinely when you know the feeling that someone believes in you and helps you out. So, you know, JJ he's definitely shown me not only how to run a very successful business and keep it going in the summer, which he does with his stargazing stuff, but how to be a good person in our industry and how to really be, I guess, number one or at the top of the industry in our area by his actions and his approach to business and his approach to concierge. And definitely he's got a good business. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, JJ, if you remember from the previous podcast, he is the largest off-road tour in the Southwest. You know, he grew from just a couple vehicles to now he's got over 80. And so he's been very successful. It's pretty incredible that, you know, he would put his trust of knowledge into somebody who's just getting started. So I think that's good on JJ, and also just shows me, you know, how powerful that email that you sent him a few months before, you know, just thinking, you could have just, you know, thanked the guide for giving you water and, you know, send him a thank you card or, you know, something like that. But it sounds like you crafted a really impactful message in that email, thanking, you know, you didn't know who JJ was or who was going to get the message, but you just wanted to make sure somebody over there knew, you know, what that impact really meant to you and how important that moment was in, you know, and you put it in terms of your life. You know, you were running out of water in the middle of the Arizona desert. That's not a good way.
Well, I mean, I think, I know, I mean, you think about it, like any tour operator who's watching this or, you know, listening to this, who might have started out as a guide like I did, and then went into owning the business will understand this. I mean, it's always cool. Like when I worked for Arizona Outback Adventures, I remember John, my boss, who I still adore completely, saying, like, he'd pull me in the office and say, "Hey, Laurel, you know, so-and-so, I had a blast with you today," or, you know, "So-and-so really enjoyed the fact that you did A or B or C for them out on the trail today," or you took your snake, your fake snake, or your gummy bears, or whatever crazy things that I still do as a guide. So to me, I know how it makes me feel, right? So it's kind of like, how do you think when JJ got that email, and I'm gonna guess he put it out to his staff. He's that kind of guy. You know, whoever that staff person was in that day gets that email and goes, "Wow, someone actually took the time to really, really appreciate me enough to let my owner of my company know, and my boss." So I guess in that scenario, it was more about like, yes, we are so grateful we did not die today, but at the same time, we're like, I'm thinking to myself, hey, it really needs to be known that you took the time to stop, number one, and you also took the attention off your guests and put the attention on us, and you made us feel bad about not being smart, but you know what? We deserve it, and you deserve to have some kudos, more so than just a simple thank you, you're awesome, and a hug on Four Peaks Road. So yeah, that's how that happened. Yeah.
And then extra step, you know, when you met JJ later down the road, did he remember that email that you sent to him?
Oh yeah, he did. And you know, something I got to do for him that I didn't tell you about when we were prepping for this is he's trying to get a permit on some Indian reservation land, and I was very honored. I was 6 months into business when he asked me to write a letter of recommendation on behalf of Stellar and his character. And I was very, very excited to have that opportunity to be one of, I believe it's either 3 or 5 letters he needed from different perspectives and different people in our industry, giving him a character recommendation. And of course, I would drop anything in the world for JJ to help him out. So I had the opportunity to actually speak about him, and I do that a lot actually. And I don't know, he probably thinks I'm a little nuts, but at the end of the day, it's all well deserved, and he's a great example of paying it forward and gratitude, and he's the circle of what you put out, you get back. Absolutely, he is.
Yeah, that's really great. That's really great. So, I mean, that just really shows, you know, everybody who's listening, This is called the Tips for Tour Operators podcast. When we first started talking, Laurel, you had talked about the idea of gratitude. And I had, mentioned, like, I think that's a really interesting tip. A lot of times we're talking about, business growth tips or a marketing tip or, something that's a little bit more tactical. And this is a little bit more spiritual, I guess to say, but it really has tactical impact on that. And I think that's really crazy and really cool to see that, just that, like you said, see how JJ entered your journey and how that started was really because you reached out, not wanting anything back, completely just needed to show appreciation. I think that's really, really cool.
Yeah, me too. And it's crazy.
It is crazy.
So, yeah.
So going back to the gratitude piece, you had mentioned that, that's just a big part of your life. That's how your mother had taught you and you'd seen her put that into practice as well. So now that you are, a tour operator and you're successful in what you do, and how do you show thanks, for people that come and visit your tour?
Well, I think the biggest thing about our company is we're small. And so we have 9 independent contracted guides that we can reach out to at any time during our season to utilize. So I think being small, I'm very, very personal, which means I shouldn't say that. Bill, my business partner, and we talk to all of our guests directly. And even if they're booked through concierge, most concierge staff is willing to give us direct phone numbers because we've proven that even if we have those numbers, we still will pay out a commission. It's not a big deal. It's just I want to be able to talk to the guests directly and know exactly what they're looking for while they're here, whether they have a food allergy, things like that. So I think the personal touch is huge. I do all my own thank you cards. All are handwritten. They started out, my former stepdaughter, who was 4 and 5 at the time, started writing them for me. She was a little entrepreneur. I paid her $1 a card. She misspelled everything, but it was the cutest thing in the world. And that's how it kind of started. And when Bill and I split up, and we forming really good business partners, obviously I don't see her that often anymore. And so I now do it on my own, and I glitter bomb some of them. I have to put a warning on them that there's glitter on the inside, but I'm very personal, not cookie cutter. So, dear Phoenician staff, thank you so much for the mountain bike tour recommendation. We're really grateful. The guests had a blast at Brown's Ranch today. We really appreciate you very much, and I sign all of our staff's names, and I throw glitter in there or something crazy. I use racing numbers, that I have to, I guess I'm just really eccentric and different. Like, I make sure that I stand out with my thank you notes, and I want to leave an impression, and it's really important to me to make sure that everything is done personally and not so cookie cutter. So that's the way I think we've been successful when it comes to showing gratitude. I do hug people. I'm a hugger. Most of my staff, I think, are huggers too. Not afraid to say, hey, will you accept a hug? And heart to heart always. I was a massage therapist, so heart to heart is the way you should do it. And just making sure people know. Also, I think even if we don't get a tour, so let's just say I'm going to use, like, the JW Marriott calls me and says, hey, Laurel, I have 4 guests in front of me. They might want to go hiking, but they're not sure. Can you give me pricing? Can you give me availability? And they call back and they say, well, they decided to go rafting, let's just say, or ATVing or something. I'm always still like, thank you so much for even considering us. Like, you have no idea how much it means to me that you even called. I'm very, very grateful. So I just really make sure that people know that even if you don't use us, it's okay. They're still going on an adventure, but thanks, you thought of me. And that is the most important thing to me. Is probably one of the key things is just to know where your guests went and know where they were and listen. At the end of every tour, I call guests and ask them how their tour was, just to kind of get an idea of, hey, well, we were at Brown's Ranch and we saw a Gila monster today. So I always try to re-reference or re-go back to what they told me was awesome on their tour and make sure that I hit those points when I'm talking to them, or when I go to the concierge and thank them and say, oh, by the way, the guests today saw a Gila monster out at Brown's Ranch. You might want to hit that. So it's personal. I mean, I think, and I'm not sure because I haven't been in business for 20 years. Like some of the tour operators out there are 25, and kudos to you for doing that for so long. But I think it feels like when you get big, the smaller little pieces kind of disappear because you're so focused on volume possibly and creating a more money based business. But when you're small like I am, it's easier for me now where I am in my journey to be hands-on, more personal, because I'm not slammed busy constantly like some of these bigger companies, like JJ, for example. There's no way JJ Briles could go logistically and thank every single person like I do. He would have to, and he is in the process of hiring someone to do that for him because he's so big. He's grown his company at a rate that's amazing. So being small, I still have a couple years of that left in me. But my goal is to continue to do that as long as my company is successful and going strong.
Do you think that it possibly could be a case that somebody, let's say they're a smaller boutique tour, and they want to be a big tour, they just have that drive in them. Do you think they could still hold on to that gratitude piece and still be as impactful?
I can't answer that question honestly, because I'm not in that situation yet. I'm just, right now we're entering our third year of business, and I can tell you I am so grateful for where we stand currently. We've had really good success, especially our last season. We are way above and beyond anything I ever imagined. Looking forward, we have some really big tours coming up in the fall. I guess the fall for Arizona. So yeah, I'm from the Midwest, remember? So, but that question I can't answer because I haven't experienced being big yet. All I can speak in terms of that would be working for a corporate company like AOA who grew their business too. They're 20 years into business, and I mean, their story is very similar to, say, JJ's story. They started out one way, small, grew it, had a specific tour, and now they're bigger. And so the way that they handle, I'm not sure how they handle their marketing side of it, but they have 3 or 4 people working marketing for them. It's just me. Like I'm the social media person who misspells things on Instagram. I'm the one in the field taking pictures. I'm the one going out with my staff just to be out there to take photos. So it's all me right now. So that question is a little difficult for me to answer, but all I can say is that it's real simple. You just go, you say thank you to somebody to their face. It's genuine, and that should be good enough. I mean, that should show your gratitude is just, hey, thank you so much for what you did for me today.
Yeah. And I think a lot of other tour operators can really relate to the spot that you're in. You're the person, like you said, you're doing the social media, you're building the relationships with concierges, you're going to the dinners and the conferences and building those bigger networks. And then at the same time, you're also the one that's trying to make sure that every guest feels the real appreciation for what they did. I mean, anybody who goes to a destination or wants to go out on a tour, they really can. They can do a lot of different activities. They can do a lot of different tours, but they chose you. And it sounds like you really make sure that those guests feel so appreciated for that opportunity that they gave you. And you as the owner, I know that you said you distill that even down to your guides, which I think is really good. So how?
Yeah, I mean,
Oh yeah, go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, so when I worked, we're just kind of, I'm just going to touch on this one. When I worked for Arizona Outback Adventures, it was, I did and I didn't have the opportunity to connect with the people that booked us. So, for example, a concierge booking, we as guides didn't have access to knowing where the bookings came from, if that makes sense. So and at the same time there, because of my credential, I actually had access to guests directly to make tours a little more personal. I was one of the mountain bike guides that had a really strong background. So therefore I was very grateful and lucky to take out some super awesome high-end fast guests that were just crazy amazing. So, but my point is that it's now that I have my own business, I have access to all that. So I can, my guides can call the guests directly, or when we email back and forth, like when I send the personal email about, hey, here's what we're going to do, here's where you're going to meet us, I can CC my guide in on the email, and my guide can have full access to the guest directly. And that way there's a personal connection already set in the beginning, but there's a trust piece on that too, because you want to make sure that if you're going to include all your guests on these emails, that one of your guides isn't going to run off and kind of like I did and start another guiding company, right? But lucky for me, I respected AOA and I never utilized utilized the contacts I had for my business. All my stuff has been via social media. Huge. I get a lot of hits from social media outlets. And so everything we do is real personal. And I think that's very important when you're small, but when you get bigger, there's a lot of more corporate rules and corporate things that you have to deal with if you're working in a corporate type of environment, right? So
yeah, that does make sense. And I think a lot of guides actually get their start because a lot of tour operators get their start because they were guides at other businesses, and they think they saw an opportunity to make things a little bit better and make the experience better outside of that guide. So I think it's a valid concern that you have there. Yeah,
I mean, and hey, when you work for another company for the years that I did, of course, absolutely, you're grateful for, I had a blast working for AOA. I mean, it was fun. Like, I never did I have a day where I came back to the office and didn't have a good time. And I was always just fun. But I always felt in my heart, a lot of people would tell me, a lot of my return guests over the years who would re-request me each year would say out in the field, you could totally do this. Like, you could own your own company. And, there were a lot of days where Bill and I at the time would sit down and I'd say, do you think we could do this? Like, what would this take? Like, it's not like you can just set up a company and go take people hiking, right? You just can't be like, okay, $35 a person, here we go. There's liability insurance, and tour operators will know and be able to relate to me on this. But there's all kinds of other things that when you're a guide for a corporate place, you don't know about until you do it yourself. And that's where it's a little bit, that's where it gets a little crazy. So for me, owning my own business, I am grateful for all the experiences that I had with AOA prior, and where it's put me now is in a position that I'm boutique. And they're a bigger company, so I kind of have a little bit of a niche when it comes to tour operating. And trust me, when I get calls for big tours like 60 people, I refer AOA because they have the logistics, and I know that, and I know what kind of tour they provide. So it's a good relationship, I believe, that way. So yeah,
that's great. That's really great.
Yeah. I'm grateful. Hey, gotta be thankful for the journey you've had that leads you to the journey where you are now. So
Yeah, that's really great. So speaking of the journey and speaking of guides, do you do anything special to show, appreciation and gratitude towards the guides that you work with now? The people that you are hiring.
well, it's I guess I guess the correct answer to that is yes. We've we when you own a company like this, you go through some really I've had some really hard times with some of my staff in which there's been times where things don't always go exactly as planned. For example, sometimes when a guest does leave gratuity for my guide, I feel really bad about that, and I know that my staff is amazing. When the TripAdvisor review says they're amazing, or the Yelp review is just crazy amazing, and they don't get a gratuity, that really bothers me. And so I probably shouldn't say this if Bill's going to watch it, but I have a little bit of a stash, so to speak, to make sure that my guides get a little bit of extra in their paycheck if they don't get something.
So you actually, if anybody's listening that's outside the U.S., in the U.S., we tip, pretty much a lot of different services. So if somebody actually doesn't get tipped from the guest, you as the business owner make sure that guide gets it. Wow, that's really incredible.
Yeah, I mean it's not a cash tip, right? It's put in their check. They're in all independent contractors, so it it could kind of I don't want to use the words it could be not the best scenario, but at least I try really hard to make sure when they call me. Typically, when a tour is over, I check in with all my staff, and I need to know, hey, did you get a gratuity on a credit card? Because we need to charge, right? We need to finish the charge, close the charge out, and I need to add that onto the total through our booking system. But if my staff calls me and goes, nope, I didn't get anything today, my first reaction is, okay, why not? Like, either the guest doesn't know that we're a service industry, which is in my emails, I'm very direct about. And if the guide is amazing, make sure you tip them. The total does not include gratuity. I mean, I really try to be very direct in a kind way, let the guests know that that's a huge part of our industry. Is the gratuity piece is big for us. But yeah, so if they don't get one, there's been a lot of times where I've just looked at my little stash, so to speak, and include something in their paycheck just to make them feel. I mean, let's be honest, if I call the guest and the guest had a great time and they're not telling me anything's wrong, I'm like, okay, great. But it's really hard for me to say. I guess I would never say this. So how come you didn't tip my guide today? So instead, I just give my staff a little extra, because to me, I know they're amazing and I think they're valued, and I value them very, very much. And I believe that if you show value and respect to your staff, that they will do a killer job for you in the field and really stand behind your business model and stand behind what you believe. So wow. I do that. And I think, no, I shouldn't say that. I think JJ might do, I shouldn't speak for him on that, but I think JJ might do that a little bit too. So maybe.
Yeah, that's really incredible. That's, I've always wondered about that. And, me being on, I do the marketing side, I don't see that sort of relationship too much, but that's really incredible. And that's really, going above and beyond for your staff. I think that's great. Yeah.
And then, so the other thing is and tour operators out there who still go out in the field. I still personally go out on tour, especially in the summer. I take a lot of the tours to keep the money coming into our business. But when I go out with my staff, typically, it depends on the scenario, but when there's a gratuity given, I make sure that they get it. And because I'm the owner of the company, so it's kind of like, I mean, it depends. Like if I'm out there and I'm the lead guide, or I'm actually on the bike with two of my other guides or something, absolutely, I'm going to split it like 3 ways because I was out there too. But when there's a big group and I'm just out there running logistics, or I'm out there, no backpack on the back of the group, just taking photos, being present, shaking hands with people. If I can get to the trailhead, introducing myself as the owner, then in that scenario, no way, it's all them. So I do things like last year I paid for my male staff. Well, the females went to Sedona Mountain Bike Fest on day 1, and I paid for all of us to do that. And then the next day our male staff went. So I try to do things like that where it's bike or hike related, but it's something that I do just personally to, say, hey, why don't you guys go to Sedona and go to the Mountain Bike Fest? That way they're getting in shape still, which is good. And they're enjoying something that is pretty epic. So yeah, that was a good time.
Yeah, that's really great. So if you had to give a piece of advice to, your average tour operator out there, that's, average size, been in business for a few years, that, they wanted to show a little bit more gratitude, what's a piece of advice that you would give them to help incorporate this into their day-to-day life?
I mean, I think that just, being thinking about where you came from and how you started and who stepped in to help you is always how I look at it. Is like, when you were going through some rough times, and I'm talking about tour operators who have been in business for, let's say, 15 plus years, we'll use as an example. I want you to think back to your first year of business. And I don't know about you, but my first 6 months, we had no phone calls. And I was panicking. Like, I was crying, like, to Bill, what's wrong? I've gone to concierge. I've done this. But all of a sudden, people just kind of walk into your life and they help you. And they, like JJ, taking me out to see concierge and endorsing me. Like, that was a huge moment of like, holy crap, the Phoenician just called, So going back to, I think, your roots and exploring how it felt when you first started, and reliving the moments of kindness that people gave, and the love and support they gave you, I think makes you think more to be more grateful for what you have now because of what you started with. And I know for a fact, for me, and I've watched some of these podcasts of these tour operators, I mean, Amanda and Stephanie Long from Hot Air Expeditions, their parents started with one hot air balloon, I mean, in their backyard, and they grew this, this giant company. And I mean, can you imagine just having like one thing like that? And now they're like, they can take 100 passengers at one time, so it's going back to your roots, thinking about all the days where you're like, why won't the phone ring? And now when the phone rings, being grateful that the call is actually coming to you, and putting that out into whatever universe you believe in, and that'll come back. And that would be the way I would think of it is, and I hope moving forward, I always keep that mindset. So.
Yeah, that's really powerful. So, I mean, just to recap a little bit, if somebody is, whether they're a new tour or an old tour, there's this idea of showing gratitude as a way for, letting other people that, may have impacted you, making sure that they understand, what that impact is, and not expecting anything in return. Like you said, not telling anybody, paying it forward, and just, having that mindset where you are able to appreciate somebody fully, and think about that, your journey and your path, and how you've probably struggled in a few things, and who's helped you, and really putting your mind in an area where you can appreciate, fully what that means, and then take that energy and pay it forward without expecting anything in return. I think that's a really powerful way to just operate as a human. let alone, just in your tour. But being that tours are so big as far as, creating personal connections with people, making sure that people have a really great time, putting yourself in that mindset where you're just really thankful for them being there. You're going to do everything you can to make sure that they're having a great time. I think it's an incredible place to be.
Yeah, and so when you're in that state of gratitude, so to speak, it typically, everybody has bad days and everybody has moments where your day's not, fun. But when you're in a state of gratitude, it just seems like you attract bigger and better things, or people walk into your life, maybe in and out, doesn't matter, but they walk in and out for reasons that are amazing. And like Bill always tells me, and when we were married and now that we're just strictly business partners, he would always just say, you got to embrace, Laurel, you got to embrace the good. Like, don't, when there's no calls, okay, he was like, just embrace the fact that today you got to speak to a concierge directly. Or so, as you just said, not only in business should you be grateful to people and people in your life, but also as a human, and generally speaking, when I'm in being myself, I guess, without being owner of a business, I'm still the same. And when I'm racing, I'm the same, grateful and thankful when I pass people racing, or they pass me, I'm kind and nice. And so, yeah, I think it goes all across the board in your life. Generally speaking, you should just always thank people, always take the time just to say thank you when people do something nice and kind for you.
Well, Laurel, with that said, thank you so much for reaching out to me on Instagram. That's how we met. We Instagram followers for each other. So thank you very much for reaching out to me and for initiating that contact and introducing yourself and just telling me quite a bit about your journey. I think it's really powerful. And so thank you very much for that. And also thank you very much for joining the podcast. I think it's been really incredible. I think it's a completely different topic than I ever would have considered before. And you popped into my life, into my journey. And so I'm very appreciative. And I hope that people get a lot of value out of it, because I think this topic is just so incredible.
I definitely made a bold move reaching out to you after watching a few of my personal favorites in our industry talk about different aspects of business. But you're welcome. I'm definitely, this is my first big time podcast experience, and so of course I'll always remember doing this 10 years from now. But it's been being able to talk about something I love and talking about my business and talking about where I came from. Definitely, I hope it helps other people understand and they can relate in some aspects of this. But I'm very, very, very grateful that you accepted my Instagram messaging and ran with this type of topic, because I know your company hits a lot of different topics that make businesses very, very successful. And I'm very grateful for those readings and podcasts. So thank you.
Well, you're very welcome. Is there anything else you want to mention before we close it out for the day?
Everybody should come mountain bike and hike in Scottsdale, Phoenix at some point in their life. And we would be more than happy to be that tour company that would love to take you and give you an amazing experience and definitely show you one of the best times you'll ever have.
So if somebody is, looking forward to, taking a tour with you, or maybe they just want to reach out and talk to you, what's the best way for someone to find you online, or just to find you in general?
The best way on Instagram, Wild Bunch Desert Guides. Don't put 2 S's because we do not serve dessert. People do that. Our website is wildbunchdesertguides.com, and you can find us on Facebook, Instagram. So, you can reach out that way or call directly. Bill or I answer the phone, so it's personal. You're not going to get, hello, thank you for calling Wild Bunch Desert Guides. To go mountain biking, press 1. No, that's not the way it is. It's either me or Bill, and I'm pretty crazy enthusiastic when the phone rings. So Bill's more Bill's more subtle and soft spoken, where I'm more like, woohoo, phone call, all right, you know. So if you talk to me, it's going to be an emotional experience. Where you talk to Bill, it's going to be direct. So yeah, just call, email. You can email me directly off our website. I respond pretty enthusiastically, and definitely, you know, you can get me through Instagram. So yeah, there's a lot of different ways. We're small, so we're not all over the place just yet, but we're getting there. So
very nice, very nice. So wildbunchdesertguides.com, also on Instagram and Facebook. So if anybody has any questions out there, they just want to talk to Laurel. If you got anything out of this, make sure you reach out and show some gratitude for Laurel. I think that's a big message there. With that said, thank you so much, everybody, for watching. Laurel, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. It's been an absolute pleasure. Take care.
Thank you, you too. Thank you.
Bye.